Hello, hope everyone's doing well. In case you guys haven't noticed already, this is part two of the Joseph video. In the first part, we established some presuppositions and facts that we're going to be going off of in this video. So if you want to understand this kind of presentation, if you will, in its full context, I do recommend that you go and watch that first part, in case you guys have not already. With that short disclaimer out of the way, please enjoy the video, and God bless. Before closing out our discussion on Joseph and moving on to other things, I want to take a look at two archaeological discoveries uncovered by the archaeologist Manfred Betek in his 1979 to 1997 excavations at Avaris. Betek and his team began a series of excavations in modern-day Tel El Taba, historically known as Avaris. The largest excavation site made at this site was a large palace belonging to an Egyptian dignitary, dated to be from either the 12th or 13th dynasty, which, to put that into perspective, somewhere between 1900 to 1600 BC, which falls in the time frame we established in the first video for when Joseph most likely lived. The palace, although originally boasting a Syrian architectural style, was later built over with an Egyptian one. Inside of this palace are 12 decorative pillars, and in the backyard garden area, 12 tombs. We'll take a closer look at one of these tombs in particular later, but for now let's direct our attention to the cylinder seal that was found on the northern wing of the palace. The following is a flat image of the seal found by BTEC's team, and would have been used to stamp wax or clay over papyrus. Seals such as this have been excavated all over the ancient world, from Babylon to Greece. These things are pretty much everywhere. As you can see, there's a lot going on here, and there are two current leading theories surrounding what this is an image of. The one accepted by most scholars, and what Manfred Betek himself declares it as in his book on the Avaris excavations, is an image of the Syrian weather god Baal-Zephon. Baal-Zephon was worshipped by many Semitic people groups at this time in history, particularly the Canaanites. The Baal theory comes from the belief that Baal is depicted here as the protector of sailors and overlord of the seas, the sea being represented by the snake and waters, with the deity himself standing on what appear to be waves. The ram behind the god is his companion, the weather bull. Baal is also sometimes just depicted as a bull, so it makes sense in that respect as well. This could also explain the boat in the bottom of the seal. This theory, for the most part, seems very coherent. However, there are a few things that this theory does not account for. For one, the lion in the bottom right. Its uneven proportions make its placement all the more confusing. Additionally, what appears to be the head of the antelope in the top left, cut off by the broken clay. This could depict the Syrian deity Atar, but his worship by the Canaanites wasn't observed till 9th century BC, and although it is certainly possible this is who it represents, it still seems a little out of place for this time in history. Another issue with the Baal interpretation is the eagle below the waters. The only idea I could have about its imagery is maybe it's depicting how an eagle might dive below the surface of waters on a hunt, which I suppose would make sense. The final issue is whatever is in the top right. Because the seal is broken, it's most likely a larger image that has been cut off, but at a plain glance, it kind of looks like a mushroom. Psychedelics, sometimes in the form of mushrooms, were known to be used by many of the pagan religions throughout the Middle East, so it could certainly have something to do with that. This is one theory surrounding the interpretation of this seal, and as I said, it is the leading one taken by scholars. However, considering the symbolism of 12 throughout the palace, along with the next big piece of evidence in the tombs, which we'll discuss in a little bit here, the other interpretation, I believe, makes much more sense. And this second interpretation is the seal represents the 12 tribes of Israel. Remember how in the last video I talked about that before Jacob's death, he extends a series of prophecies and blessings on Joseph and his 12 brothers? Well, the theory is that each symbol in this scroll corresponds to one of the brothers and their respective blessings. The earliest I can see of this theory being put forth was by Rabbi Michael Baron, who wrote an extremely detailed article on the matter, which I'll link in the description below if you'd like to read for yourself. In order to understand this theory, we'll go through Jacob's blessings verse by verse and identify which symbol applies to each of his 12 sons. Jacob starts his blessings with Reuben. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the firstfruits of my strength. Unstable as waters, you shall not have preeminence. Reuben, being unstable as water, would be represented here by the water. As we get into what the meaning of the other symbols are, its exact placement below the bull and above the lion will make sense as well. Next, Jacob addresses Simeon and Levi. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce. The theory here is that Levi is represented by the eagle or bird of prey. According to Jewish oral tradition, Levi was oftentimes symbolized by a bird of prey. Another hint that this might be Levi is that it is the third from the top, and Levi was the third son of Jacob. Simeon would then be represented by what appears to be a wall at the bottom of the image. Again, referring to Jewish rabbinical tradition, the flag of Simeon is said to have borne an image of the walls of Shemin. This is a modern-day rendition of it I found, which I think looks pretty cool. Seeing as Simeon was the one who originally had the plan to kill Joseph before being talked into selling him into slavery by Judah, it makes sense that he would be placed at the bottom of the image. Next is Judah. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. Judah would be presented by, no surprise here, the lion. Judah, also being the fourth son of Jacob, could correspond to the fact that he is the fourth from the top. His placement at the bottom could also be due to his great role in the plot to sell Joseph into slavery. Next is Zebulun. Zebulun shall dwell by the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be Sidon. This one's pretty easy. Zebulun is the boat. Next up is Issachar. Issachar is a strong donkey, crouching between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good and that the land was pleasant. So he bowed his shoulders to bear and became a servant at forced labor. Rabbi Barran theorized that Issachar is also represented by the boat. To substantiate this, he refers to Moses' blessings on the tribe of Zebulun and Issachar in Deuteronomy 33. The two images depicted with the boat are likely mushrooms. Seeing as psychoactive mushrooms had a spiritual significance, and would have also been a high-dollar trade item, which could explain why they're depicted on a boat. Next is Gad. Raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. Gad, whose name literally means luck or good fortune, could be depicted as a mushroom pointing down from heaven, to symbolize blessings coming from God. Admittedly, this one is stretching a little, considering that there is a larger image that is cut off by the broken clay. This mushroom is just what we can see, and is likely part of a larger image that we cannot see. Next is Dan. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. A serpent in the way, a viper along the path. Dan being referred to as a serpent will be represented here by the viper, or snake towards the bottom of the image. Another clue it may be Dan is that the paw of Judah, the fourth born of Jacob, has his paw outstretched over Dan, the fifth born of Jacob. Next is Asher. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. And in Deuteronomy 24, Moses blesses Asher by saying, Blessed be Asher above sons. Let him be the favorite of his brethren. Let him dip his foot in oil. Asher could be represented by what appears to be the olive branch sprouting from the top left corner. Seeing as richness and oil is attributed to Asher, the olive tree would be a very fitting representation of this. In addition, the olive tree branch bears 8 leaves. Asher is the 8th son of Jacob, making this another way the symbol could apply to him. After Asher is Naphtali. Jacob remarks, Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears royal fawns. Similar to the boat, this is also an easy one. This symbolism works with the antelope peeking its head out from the top left. Again, though, the image is cut off, and although this appears to be an antelope, it could be something else. Next, we have Benjamin. Benjamin is a ravenous world, in the morning devouring the prey, and in the evening dividing the spoil. And in Deuteronomy 33:12, the beloved of the Lord dwells in safety. The high God surrounds him all day long, and dwells between his shoulders. It's possible that the 2 peaks below the feet of the man represent the shoulders of Benjamin, with God being represented by the man above Benjamin. Seeing as Benjamin is the 12th son of Jacob, we would expect to see some form of symbolism with the number 12 here. However, I wasn't able to find any, which admittedly cast a little bit of doubt on this theory. Last, but certainly not least, is Joseph. In Jacob's blessings to Joseph, there's nothing that we can directly attribute to this image. However, from Moses' blessings in Deuteronomy 33, we are told this. A firstborn bull, he has majesty, and his horns are the horns of a wild ox. With them he shall gored the peoples. This symbolism of the horn bull attributed to Joseph could be represented by, well, the bull, with its downtrodden horns on the top left. The emphasis on Moses' blessing being the horns lines up perfectly with the bull's horns being the focal point of the image. The bull is also on top of all the other symbols, representative of the fact that Joseph would go on to rule over them during his time as Grand Vizier. It is also possible that Joseph could be represented by the man standing on the peaks in the center of the image. Before Jacob announces his blessings to his 12 sons, he addressed Joseph in verse 22, saying, "Moreover, I have given to you rather than to your brothers, one mountain slope that I took from the hand of the Amorites with the sword and with my bow." According to patriarchal tradition, these were the mountains of Gerizim and Ebal, which, as you can see in the image, form a nice valley. The man standing with his feet atop them could be representative of Joseph being given dominion over the land by his father. It could also represent Jacob himself conquering the Amorites with, as he said, sword and bow. Alternatively, it could represent God, similar to how it does in Benjamin's example, with him having dominion over these mountains. All in all, there's certainly a fair bit of evidence for this cylinder seal representing the 12 tribes of Israel. However, this interpretation of the seal makes far more sense than the Baal interpretation when we put it in the context of the next discovery we'll look at. Earlier, we briefly mentioned the presence of 12 garden tombs behind the palace. Let's take a look at these tombs in closer detail. One of these tombs is significantly more ornate than the rest, at one point boasting a pyramid which has since been destroyed. Pyramids were not just given to everyone and were usually the symbol or mark of a pharaoh or a very important dignitary. Scattered throughout the tombs are many weapons of Syrian and Asiatic origin, indicating that the family whom the palace belonged to was likely not of Egyptian origin. Inside of the pyramid tomb is a colossal statue, and before it's being broken down, likely stood at over 3 meters tall. The statue depicts a dignitary of Semitic or Asiatic origin. This can be seen by his hairstyle, red hair, and yellow skin, typically how Semitic people were depicted by Egyptians at this time in history. Manfred Bitek, the archaeologist that led this excavation, remarks that, quote, "The form of this statue has no parallels in all of Egypt," indicating that it was very professionally made. Dorothy Arnold, another well-known archaeologist, hypothesizes that it was made in the same Hawaiian workshops that Amenemhat III's statues were carved in, due to it bearing striking similarities in its construction methods. Now, if you'll remember, Amenemhat III was the pharaoh we established that Joseph would have lived under. The statue bearing similarities in its construction to Amenemhat III's statue is another connection to Joseph to make note of. The statue is depicted with its arms crossed, and in its right arm, a throw stick. What is probably most striking about this statue is what it is depicted as wearing. Where it was usual for the time for Egyptian dignitaries and pharaohs to be depicted shirtless or with minimal clothing, usually with white robes, this statue bears a long, multicolored coat covering most of its body, bearing the colors of red, blue, and gold. Attire such as this would have been very uncharacteristic of rulers or anyone in Egypt at this time. And in looking at this statue, we can't help but be reminded of Joseph's iconic multicolored coat given to him by his father many years ago. The body is missing from this tomb, and seeing as very many valuables were left in the tomb alongside the statue, it is unlikely that this is the work of grave robbers. Let's remember back to Joseph's last moments recorded in Genesis. "I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, "God will surely visit you, and you will carry up my bones from here." So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him and put him in a coffin in Egypt. If these words are true, it makes sense that we would not see his bones here in Egypt today. Now let's consider the 3 following pieces of evidence from this palace and how they factor into our question of, was Joseph a real person? For one, the repetition of 12 throughout the palace architecture harkens back to the 12 tribes of Israel, along with its originally Syrian architectural style that was later built over, hints to the palace originally belonging to Semitic or Asiatic people, along with the cylinder seal we discussed, depicting what appears to be the 12 tribes of Israel. And this followed by what appears to be the tomb of a ruler of Semitic descent, who is adorned with a multicolored coat dated to be from the Middle Kingdom period. Specifically, from around the same time as Amenemhat III. With the following pieces of evidence considered, I believe it is very likely that the following palace belonged to Joseph and his family during Joseph's viziership in Egypt. With everything considered, I believe we can say with confidence that the historical record aligns with the life of Joseph as described in Scripture. For the sake of time, I had to omit a few other lines of evidence relevant to the discussion, but if people request it sometime in the future, I would absolutely be open to making a follow-up video. Joseph's impression on history is extremely clear, and I believe with the evidence presented here today, we can say beyond a reasonable doubt that the biblical Joseph was a real person. If you have any questions or feel as if I've gotten anything here wrong, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to address as many issues as I can. Thank you again for watching, and God bless.